Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this episode of Busting Brexit Myths, I'd like to ask Brexiteers what happened to their insistence a few years ago that the EU were going to force all members to adopt the euro in 2020. They seem to have gone rather quiet on that one. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, as far as I can tell, it began in 2014. The Telegraph, a Tory and Brexit backing paper, made the claim that all EU member states were going to be forced to join the euro from 2020. Now, don't get me wrong, those who were fully seized of the core aims of the EU would absolutely love all member states to join the single currency. It was a big push with Maastricht. It goes right back to the founding principles, quite frankly. The European project was essentially about preventing conflicts between major European powers. A lofty ambition, given that there hadn't been even a generation of peace amongst the mighty nations of Europe in the preceding 1,000 years. The main strategy was to bring these nations together in an interdependent community. Each nation would be so reliant upon the others for their economic well-being that conflict should be impossible. And it worked. So a natural extension of the strategy would, of course, be to adopt a single currency. This has been discussed right back from before I was born. That would absolutely lock the nations together in economic harmony. And many of us would embrace that. After all, the argument has been proven correct. There have been no conflicts between these nations. The European project has been a spectacular success. But there are lots of people in a number of European countries that associate their national currency with national identity. And that's fair enough. I'm not going to downplay that. I'm not going to rubbish it at all, even though I don't share that association myself. Britain is, of course, such a nation. And a lot of importance, particularly in England, I suppose, is attached to using the pound. But even in Scotland, to an extent, evidenced by the different design on Scottish notes. At least while physical money still exists anyway, maybe another generation, people are still going to have that association. So the idea that we'd be forced to adopt the euro was a powerful one in Brexit causes, and a blatant lie by a British newspaper kept coming back. As recently as last year, I would have Leave supporters telling me about it. If we stay in the EU, we're going to have to adopt the euro. Ask them to point out where in the various EU treaties it's mentioned, and they draw a bit of a blank. But time has now shut them up. It's 2020. Bulgaria still uses the lev, Croatia the kuna, Denmark the krona, Czech Republic the tuna, Poland the zloty, blah, 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 blah. Sweden the krona. We're going to come on to that in a minute as well. You know, until a couple of months ago, we could have also added to the list the British pound. And if some people are still thinking it's a thing, well, it's only just the start of 2020, they have to do it by the end of 2020. I've got a bit of a question for you. Why isn't it happening then? Why isn't it in the process of happening? Why in all these other countries are they not doing anything about it? It takes a little while to get these things through. You don't just have to, agree to replace your national currency with the euro and then mint new coins and print new notes, which, by the way, would still have to go through some sort of design process because each individual country puts their own designs on them. You need to get the entire country ready for the changeover, and that also requires not just guidelines but physical changes. None of this is happening in the 8 EU member states still using their own currency. Why? Because they're not changing over. They're keeping their normal currency. Now, don't get me wrong. I can well understand how someone may have fallen for the lie. After all, as I say, the Maastricht Treaty did push the idea that all EU member states should really adopt the euro. It's all part of the plan, including new ones. But the reality is that when a member state joins, they negotiate the terms of membership. It's not just normally when you'd go to a club, like as an individual, we go to a club, there's a list of requirements. You've got to sign up to these. I'm a member, for example, of the Labour Party. There's a list of guidelines. When I join the party, I agree to those guidelines. I don't negotiate the terms of my membership of the Labour Party. But in the EU, you do. The member states negotiate the terms of their membership. That can include opt-outs. And it has included opt-outs on the single currency for quite a lot of them. The UK and Denmark, whilst Maastricht was being negotiated, were already members, of course, and so we opted out during those negotiations. Other nations such as Poland, which joined afterwards, negotiated the opt-out as part of their negotiations for joining in the first place, so they don't have to adopt it. The same will be true of any new countries joining the future as well. They'll be encouraged to join. Of course, but whether they do will depend on the terms of membership that they agree, and the EU have already demonstrated that they do not push the issue as a red line to joining, because there's been plenty of new countries joined since Maastricht that have said, actually, do you know what, we quite like our own currency, please. All right then. So yes, the EU member states are not forced to join the euro if they don't want to, in 2020 or 2021 or 2050 or 3000, quite frankly. The date when this was supposed to have taken place has arrived, and there is no movement to implement this misunderstood aspect of Maastricht in 8 current EU members. Would have been 9 if we'd have stuck about. It should also be noted, as a final little thing, that when Maastricht negotiations were taking place, Sweden did not negotiate an opt-out. But they have still not adopted the euro. Why is that? And that is because when it came to it, their citizens voted against it. And I cannot emphasise this point strongly enough. There is absolutely nothing in the EU mechanisms that allow it to force a member state to do anything against its will. Not a thing. And the purpose of the union, much as with any union, is to become collectively stronger through common interest. The EU has never forced anything on an unwilling population. It has heavily encouraged certain things, but it cannot actually force them. It can say, if you don't do this, well, we're not going to do this nice thing for you as well. That's politics. But it can't actually enforce it against its will. And Sweden is proof positive of that. They didn't negotiate an opt-out. Technically, they should adopt it. They've gone, actually, our people don't want to adopt it. We made a mistake not opting out. So we're just opting out unilaterally. Fine. So I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, then please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.